Okay, welcome back. I'm gonna talk about the next most important lecture on SCCM elementaries, which I call it as vocabulary. So before we jump into the SCCM vocabulary, just want to revise that we also talked about the versions, which was started with 1.0, later point 2, 3, 7. We're gonna learn now current branch, which is CB. Sometimes people will also call CB. Right, and SCCM stands for System Center Configuration Manager, right? So let's jump into the features. We talked about the inventory and the application deployment, operating system deployment, complaints level management, and user profiling, and reports, remote control, power management, and you can control the device management like mobiles if you have integrated with Intune, Microsoft Intune. All these are the capabilities, in fact the patch management, all those, and that's great. Let's jump into the vocabulary. So before you, why vocabulary is very important. This is not the actual vocabulary, this is the real vocabulary. The difference between that actual and this, the real vocabulary way we talk when you are working as a SCCM admin, you must be using all these words, and you must be familiar with these words. If you're not familiar with these words, that means your lack of knowledge, definitely. So you first need to understand what exactly these words. Okay, once you understand this, whatever I try to explain to you will be easily you can understand. So I request that if you're not understand any of these, again and again repeat it and learn it, and once you are comfort, move further. Otherwise, just hold here to try to understand, try to get the idea of that word, and so that it will be very useful for you to learn SCCM. This is very key, and this is the skeleton of the SCCM. This is the key for this course, in fact. Okay, so the first word would be the SCCM server. When I say SCCM server, you have the SCCM server software which is installed. That's called SCCM server. So any easy way to understand. Okay, and there's something called site. Site also treat as think that you have SCCM server, right? What is SCCM server? You install some software from SCCM software, that's called SCCM server. Similarly, site also same. Okay, so that's called SCCM site. So people call as SCCM site and site. But here site, every site will have something called a site code. Okay, so it will be represented as a code. So the code is a 3-digit. Okay, it's a 3-digit code. Say example, I can say as the ABC. Okay, or 1 2 3 example. Okay, so either ABC or alpha, that is A to Z, and numbers, numerical, any of them it can be done. So like A23, I can say as A23. So what is the site code? So say example, you have 10 SCCM servers got installed. So I'll say that this is the A23 has the machine or the server. So that means I'm representing a site code. In fact, the reality is always SCCM client. When I say client, you installed some software, so that the software will communicate with your SCCM server. That software is nothing but SCCM client. So a client is a some binaries which are used to connect to the SCCM server, which is called SCCM client. So this client always communicate by using a site code. So site code is very, very important. Right, now let's also talk a little bit on a site. Site also have a 3 different types. One is the central administration site, other one would be the primary site, other one would be the secondary site. So there are there are total 3 in fact. The first one would be the central administration site, which we call it as a CAS most of the time. Other one would be the primary site, and the last but not least would be the secondary site. So what happens, the CAS. CAS is a central site. That means you have a here site which is a CAS. I'll just represent, right? Earlier we talked about every installation of SCCM we represent with a site code. So site code is alphanumerical. So I'll name this one as the CAS. So CAS is the top level. So to this I may have a child site as the primary site, right? So I can say primary site is PO1 example. There might be another PO2 as the another child site. So to this PO1 I can have another child site as secondary one, SO1. Now you know that the key points here, the site code which is easily represented here, CAS, PO1, SO1, PO2, right? So now let's talk about this site a little bit further. So site has three different sites, right? So one is a CAS and the primary and the secondary. Let's come from the down level. Okay, that would be easy way to understand, trust me. So the down one would be the secondary site. It will never have a child site. Okay, I'll repeat, it does not have any child site. So, and this secondary site always reports to a primary site, not to a CAS. Okay, and now primary site always reports to CAS site. Okay, so why this kind of design is important? Okay, I'll tell you. Say example, you have a head office here, okay, and you are managing about maybe a 500,000 computers, and maybe Germany region has maybe 100,000, and London has maybe 50,000, maybe in US may have 150,000 computers, and maybe Asia Pacific has another 100,000 computers. So how do you manage these? So to manage these you need to have a central place. Okay, that's called a CAS. So wherever you place as a CAS, as a central, it does not manage any clients. I'll repeat, say example, you have a SCCM client here, it can't report to CAS. It's not possible. Okay, it must have to go to the one of the primary site. Say example, as I said, Germany. So Germany site has PO2, it will report to PO2, and this information will be stored here. Okay, and similarly Asia Pacific was storing here PO2, and maybe Singapore is storing the information under SO1. So this information goes here and this information goes here. Okay, and this Germany information goes to CAS. So if you want to have a report of a consolidated from all these regions, okay, you need to run from a CAS, not from Germany side, right? Not from Asia Pacific, not from Singapore side. Okay, so this is the importance, and also the load and the communication and the political involvements. All of these involves when you're trying to create a type of a site. Either you create a primary site or a secondary site. It all depends on your political and your business logics and your physical connectivity and the speed. It all matters. I'm going to talk on these things later point. Now I'm trying to explain you only the vocabulary, but while I'm explaining the vocabulary, I like to explain you all the background of that word so that you can easily remember. Okay, so what we talked about is, at this point of time, we talked about the server, we talked about the SCCM server, we talked about the site, we talked about the site code. Site is basically has a three different sites, we can say. If you look at here, the site, which is the site, has expanded as central administration site, the primary site, and a secondary site. If you look at, there's another site also here, standalone primary site. It means that it does not report to CAS site. That means you don't have a CAS, here. Like earlier you have here PO1, PO2, and you also have the SO1, right? So if you don't have a company, for example, has only one location, and all other are branch locations, and it's not a major clients count. So what they have done is they might have here all the secondaries they have and one primary site like PO1. So this is a standalone, it does not report to CAS, right? So this is another site. Okay, so in that case this is called standalone site. That means there's no difference technically other than just reporting to a another site. So total three sites, right? One is the CAS and the primary site and the secondary site. Other people also call as the standalone primary site. It's just the name that it does not report to CAS site. Okay, and just to explain to you the practically, there are very less companies will have the CAS site because of the primary site itself, or a standalone primary itself does support a multiple number of machines, and it will satisfy most of the political games. Okay, now let's jump into the next word, which is site server site system. I'll put it at this point of time for you as similar to this SCCM server. So that means if you have any of the SCCM components got installed, you call it as site server or site system for now. Okay, just remember that just for now. I will change that statement later point. Okay, now you also know the SCCM client means if a client is there and if it is reporting to SCCM server, that means some software must be installed here. That software called SCCM client software, and this will always communicate by using what exactly? The site code, right? So the site code information will be hard coded within the client, and the client will communicate with that site code or with that site. Okay, now I will talk about something called hierarchy. So what exactly hierarchy? Hierarchy is nothing but as I draw here, if you look at here, this is hierarchy. So that means you have a CAS here, you have a primary, you have another primary, you have a secondary, and your client is communicating this. So this entire thing is represented with a name called hierarchy. So people will also call SCCM hierarchy. Okay, so don't confuse. SCCM hierarchy is nothing but it consists of your primaries and secondaries and your physical architecture of your SCCM server represents your hierarchy. Okay, can you say that is this also the right side one also is in hierarchy? Yes, this is also one of the SCCM hierarchy. It doesn't mean that you must have the CAS. Okay, either you have a CAS or not, you have SCCM servers here. The sites are configured, so it's one of the hierarchy. So you can say that this is a single standalone primary site hierarchy. This is along with two primaries and one CAS as one hierarchy. You can say that. Okay, the next vocabulary would be roles. So roles are like your responsibilities. Say example, a SCCM server works or it might I'll put it in this way. SCCM server has lot of SCCM features, right? Say example, one of the feature would be patch management. So one of the feature would be maybe inventory management. So all are different features. Not every company uses all of these features. Okay, some companies will ignore some of the features, and they are limited with very few features. In fact, that's a real world. And now let's talk about the roles. Roles are nothing but your actual management capabilities, which are if you enable any of the role. For example, you have a system server here, you enable here some role. Say example here, management point. So this is one of the core role. Okay, I might not take this as example right now, but let's take it and try my best to explain to you. So MP is the one of the role. So by default you will enable this role MP. So what exactly this does? So you have a SCCM client here. Say example it's 12 p.m. now, and you are configure here some software must be installed at 12 p.m. to this machine. So now client has to check whenever it is 12 p.m. it has to install that specific software by downloading from SCCM server, and it should install it. So this functionality would be taken by one of the role management point. This is one example I've told. Maybe I would be definitely talking later point lot about the management point or management point. Let's take another example as the DP. DP stands for distribution point. So that means you said 12 p.m. Some software to be installed. The software can't be installed directly. You have to download example. So to download that software, maybe that software source is available here. So wherever the source is available, that's nothing but a DP. That means the content management. So the source of the softwares will be stored in a folder. Okay, that's called a DP. Okay, so a UNC shared folder which consists of your software's library or your drivers library or your source. Okay, that consists in a network shared folder. That's nothing but your DP. Okay, so the DP gives the information to the client. That means the client will download that package from that specific DP. And once it is downloaded, it checks for the triggering point and it triggers that software to be installed, either to be notified to the user or to be automatically installed. It all depends on how you set it at the server end. Okay, so like these roles, there are more than 17 roles you have in SCCM. I just explained here 2 only roles. The multiple roles, for example, patch management separate role. To enable the antivirus management, you have endpoint protection management, and for asset intelligent feature, which will drills down the Microsoft Cal information and third-party licensing. All these can be enabled with the asset intelligent, right? So for that asset intelligent synchronization point to be enabled, like that, you have 17 different roles. In other way, there are core roles, or maybe 2 to 5 different roles are available. If you enable that, it will be more than sufficient. But if you are looking for other features to be enable, then you need to enable that specific role. Okay, so when you enable that role, SCCM works for that specific feature. That's about the roles. Now let's talk about the discovery. Discovery is nothing but before discovery, we'll talk about the boundary, and then we'll go into the discovery. So example, you are the SCCM administrator, and you have a company here, and within your company you might have your workstations, some devices, some servers. Maybe this could be your domain controller, this could be ADC, maybe DHCP server, or maybe Linux server, maybe print server, right? Maybe Windows 10. Like this, many of the objects or many of the computers or many of the devices or exist. So these are already exist, and now as a SCCM administrator, you're configuring a SCCM server here, and when you after installation, example, I'm coming to the right points right way. Like you installed a SCCM server now, and you have to tell to your SCCM server that, hey, you go and manage these machines. Okay, you have to tell to the SCCM server, hey, only work for this server, not for your London branch, maybe, right? You don't want to work, or you don't want to manage. For example, let's take an example. You have a 1 GB of MS Office package example that has to be pushed to London office. So if you push over the WAN with a 1 Mbps link, it takes ages of days to get it pushed, and you may be having 50 users. What happens? 50 into 1 GB is almost 50 GB to be downloaded over the WAN over the link of 1 Mbps. So you don't want to do that in a wrong configuration, right? You should be very careful, and you should tell to your SCCM server, hey, this is your boundary, don't cross that boundary line. So that is nothing but this line becomes as your boundary. So can you guess what we can set as a boundary line here in this case? Yes, exactly, you can set as the subnet, because every computer will assigned with some IP address. That IP address is nothing but your subnet. So subnet ID can be configured, or your Active Directory site, because AD sites will will be configured with a subnet in the background. You can set that information. In fact, I'm going to show you these things live, everything, but I'm just talking about the vocabulary at this point of time. So what exactly the vocabulary here? Boundaries are nothing but you are making sure that SCCM server not to go out of that. That means the client will always communicate with that SCCM server only, and it doesn't go out. So you're saying that SCCM server, hey, don't cross this boundary line. Okay, and what is boundary group? See, example, you have a close office, maybe Germany to maybe Finland, example, or maybe to the Lithuania. Okay, so here maybe a good link is there, and then definitely you want to manage this also. For example, this SCCM server is down, you're ready to allow your clients to go even to here also, because of the good link. Okay, in that situation you can make as a group. Okay, that means every boundaries are different. Boundaries groups is like in a group of boundaries. Okay, so example, you can say these boundaries are nothing but European Union group boundaries. Such things can be configured with the boundary group. Okay, now let's talk about what we have talked as of now. We talked about the SCCM server is nothing but the installation. Wherever you install, that's called SCCM server. Site is a 3 type like CAS, primary, secondary, and every site, whenever you install SCCM server, it has a 3 alphanumerical code to be given, and the clients always communicate with that code. In fact, the one site to another site, like a primary site to secondary, or primary to CAS, everything would be communicated with the CAS, with the site code. So site code is very critical. Site server, as I said, for now, just think that it's the SCCM server. Okay, and SCCM client is nothing but if a client has some software that will report to SCCM server, so we call it as SCCM client. And SCCM server has a roles by default, close to 17 different roles are there, and if we count, so these 17 roles are key to enable some features. Say example, you want to manage patch management, you need to enable software update point role. I'm going to show you that in a minute. These are the 17 roles. Like you want the applications to be available, like very similar to Amazon shopping cart experience you wanted, so you need to enable the first two roles, and asset intelligence, third one, certificate registration. Like that, many of the roles are there. In fact, the 17 which I have listed here. And now let's move to the boundaries. Boundaries are you're making sure that the clients should only go and communicate with a specific SCCM server, not to the outside of the SCCM server. Okay, and the boundary group are like this group of boundaries are nothing but a boundaries collection, and you're setting you're treating that as a boundary group. That means just for the content way to be available and the site code which to be assigned. I'm going to talk a later point on that in detail, but there's a word called boundary group. For now, you can understand that boundaries are collection of boundaries, are part, we call it as a boundary group. Now let's talk about discovery. So discovery is nothing but you have an office. For example, this is your office, right? And you already set as the boundary, hey, don't go outside and just manage only these clients. But what are the machines you have? How do you know? Maybe I might have here XP, or might have maybe 7, or might have Windows 10, or a server, or a Linux box, or a printer, or maybe a network share folder, maybe some other servers I might have. How would I know? I need to do something to find all these machines. That's nothing but a discovery. So discovery has a discovery methods which would be used to find all these machines or all these objects. For example, it can be users, right? So you want to find how many users you have here, or how many AD groups you have here, Active Directory groups, or you want to find out how many computers you have here, or you want to find out a network based, maybe IP subnet based you want to find out how many machines you have in a work group, or domain specific things to be discovered. So these are the different things you have. That's called a discovery. So we call it as a discovery methods. At this point of time, I can't give you more information because I'm going to teach you in a systematic order. In fact, I'm doing that, and I'm going to take a detailed session on discovery and boundary and the roles. In fact, each role we're going to detailed learn. Okay, for now I'm just making I'm trying to give you the vocabulary information, not the entire course, in fact. Okay, now let's if you understand that discovery is a method. Okay, discovery is a method which will be used to discover your users. For example, Active Directory users discovery, Active Directory group discovery, Active Directory computers discovery, and maybe a network discovery, right, which will discover your subnets or your domains, all that information, right? Also, the next word would be the company portal. A company portal is a web page. Okay, you have all the softwares will be listed here, and what are the softwares you want, just add to cart. Once it is done, request for approval. So the request will goes to maybe helpdesk team, or to the management, or maybe a software owner, and then once they approve it, if really needed approval, it will go to that approval. If not, there's no approval is needed, it gets come automatically installed to the machine. So that kind of experience you have it in a company portal. So company portal is a similar to a shopping experience. Okay, what we do it on an Amazon website. Okay, and the next one would be the inventory. I talked about the inventory, like you have the hardware inventory, and also you have something called software inventory. So don't confuse hardware inventory and software inventory. The differences would be the we're talking about the actual physical hardware. Okay, that means what type of hard disk you have, and mouse, or maybe keyboard, or the make and the monitor. All that information comes under the number of hardware machines. All that information comes under hardware. And coming back to the software, what kind of exes got installed. So it doesn't talk about in fact, I shouldn't tell that, but I have to use these words. Software inventory doesn't tell you, what software got installed. The funniest thing is, if you want to find out, MS Office is installed, you will just go to the add and remove programs, or programs and install programs, and then you find out that whether the software is listed out there or not, right? So but that is a part of hardware inventory. Okay, but not on the software inventory. Software inventory is nothing but a specific exe, or all the exes can be verified, and it will go and it will check what is the properties of that, who was the manufacturer, what is the version, and what is the software name, and where it is exist. All that information gives you as part of the software inventory. Software inventory is not just limited to your exes. You can also configure .dll file, or maybe any of the extension, maybe text, or maybe license file, LIC, or all these can be configured as part of your inventory. And also, so that's called inventory. That's just the word which you need to know about it. Inventory for hardware inventory or software inventory, you can say that. Now let's talk about the bits as the next word. There's an order, that's why I'm not explaining all in the exact order, but give an exception for me. Bits is the background intelligent transfer service. What exactly that? Say example, you have a machine, okay, and your SCCM server is trying to push some software. That means the client is downloading some software. It is downloading some software which is 1 GB in the total size. So what happens is, once it is downloading, okay, there is an option, there is a possibility that user can shut it down, right? Or maybe unexpected network interruption happen. So what happens is, if it is already downloaded, happen maybe a 15 percentage, okay. And then when the network is established, it doesn't start from the 1 again, it will start from the 15 wherever it is left over. That means it will have an option called resume option, okay. And also similarly, you also have the it aways of the network bandwidth. So example, let's take as the bandwidth as a WAN, okay, WAN link, and this is maybe your client is connected over the WAN, and if the total bandwidth is 10 Mbps, okay, and some of the services are using 9 MB of the utilization. So what happens is SCCM client is intelligently knows that, hey, 9 MB is already used, so I have only 1 MB. Out of that 1 MB, I want to use only 10 percentage. That means maybe 10 percentage would be utilized. It's not even exactly 1 MB. So when a out of 9 MB utilization, if people are using or nobody is using and full of 10 MB is available, then it will use the 10 percentage of that. Close to the 1 MB of fully utilizing would happen. So this kind of technology is built in, available within the Microsoft operating system. This is nothing new to the SCCM, but SCCM will take an advantage of bits, and it uses for its functionality, like as I said, while downloading, it will use the bits from the content servers, so that it saves a lot of bandwidth and a lot of intelligently it behaves. So bits has the checkpoint where it has stopped or where it was previous state, knows that, so that it will resume from there the download. So this will be very useful in terms of the bits. And yes, SCCM client agent will use the bits. It takes the advantage of that and downloads the content from the SCCM server to the client machine. And similarly, now when we go back to the other vocabulary, the most important one would be, out of this, there's something called WMI. So what exactly WMI? So WMI stands for Windows Management Instrumentation. Okay, so it's like an instrument where you can play it, right? When we talk about instrumentation, like it's like instrument where you can play. So but here the management instrumentation, that means what happens is, it's a Windows the Windows related core services, or maybe core can be managed with the WMI. I'll put it in this way. Okay, this is a big explanation, but I'll try to put it in a short and sweet. Hold for 2 to 3 minutes maximum, so that you would understand very well about WMI. The first point is WMI will have something called namespace, which is called root. So for example, at the top you will have a root and it has a namespace. Okay, so these namespaces are maybe for example, a namespace can be gives the information of classes. Okay, so what I was trying to explain is WMI will contain the root repository. Okay, so this repository will have the namespaces, different namespaces, and each namespace will have its own classes. So what exactly class will have the information? It will have the attribute. Okay, it will have the actual values. Okay, let me explain this. Okay, I'm sure that you might not understand all of these at this point of time, but you are gonna learn in the next few minutes. So let's come back always from the down to the top. What exactly the attributes? Say example, you have a services.msc, right? When you open a service, it has a service property like service name, whether it can be stop or start, and the logon name. These things are holding some value, right? That is represents the attributes. So services, maybe a different services you have, so you have a different classes altogether. Okay, so a class can be a printer class, or can be a BIOS class, or motherboard class, or maybe your SCCM client class. Okay, different classes will be there. In a short, I'm going to show you practically all these classes, but for now you are clear with the attributes at this point of time. Okay, now attributes will be part of the classes, and collection of classes will have the namespace. Okay, the top level we call it as a root. Okay, let's go back to the actual practically to show you know how it looks like. Okay, to show you how WML looks like on a machine, you just Google something called Scriptomatic. Okay, CRI Scriptomatic. So it was earlier 2.0, but now the 2.2 also released. But simply Google as Scriptomatic. You have the Scriptomatic 2.0, which is coming up from gallery.technetmicrosoft.com. So this is a web link. Okay, you go here and download. It's a HTML file. So HT is a combination of your HTML and the VB script, both are merged in a scripting language, and then it's called HTA. Okay, so now I've downloaded that, and I'm gonna run this in a minute and show you how this looks like and what exactly this. So when you double click this, you might get very similar to this as a pop-up saying it's not mandatory that you get it. Okay, it happens on few missions, and you get this kind of errors, and if you click yes, no, nothing happens in fact. Okay, so here you should have the drill down option. Okay, which is not coming because this was open without the admin privileges. So what you can do is go to the command prompt simply and right click run as administrator, and UAC will prompt user access control, and simply paste the path of that by just hold the shift key. Okay, and say copy as a path and then paste that. Okay, like this, and then simply hit enter. Now it actually opens that script. So it's a script. Okay, my intention is to give you how actually WML looks like. Okay, let's have a look on one of the namespace. Okay, there are multiple namespaces which I said. Okay, the root is the repository. Okay, the top level, right? It has different namespaces, right? So let's take one of the default one, which is CIMV2, which is a default all the time. And in that namespace we were talking about the classes, right? So let's open that classes. So you have multiple classes, right? So let's try to read one of them, like the logical shared access. If you don't know that what exactly that, just try to understand network adapter settings. Network adapter, you will definitely know that what is a network adapter. So let's click on that. What happens is it writes a script to pull. It is trying to echo of each of the this is the actual query. Okay, it is selecting star from Win32 is the Win32 underscore network adapter is the class name. So you're searching for everything. Star means everything. You are selecting everything and show me output. So it's gonna show you output as in the format of echoing address type. Okay, and availability caption. All these are the attributes which are available for this class. Okay, and you wanna see the output in a text. Okay, this tool gives you an option, like if you run this, it gives you an output in a text file. So what you can understand out of this is you can visually see the namespaces and the classes. Okay, I was talking about the PC BIOS also. If you go a little bit up, maybe here the BIOS class also available, like the BIOS version, bell number, caption. All these are available which are coming from the WMI repository. Okay, if you want to see all these properly in another way, give me a second, I'll show you with another tool. Okay, but it's not mandatory. I mean, if you're not getting the still you're not getting maybe at this point of time you're clear with the WMI namespaces, how it looks like, what are the namespaces. So there are multiple things, like for the Microsoft security client, CLI or SMB protocol related, storage related, different classes are there. If you're thinking about how would I know what class is meant for what, nobody knows immediately. it all comes based on the practice and the experience which you want to write a script, or you want to pull some kind of information on the client machine. Then you should know that specific namespace or the class name. Okay, but I'm going to show you the attributes, how it looks like, the attributes, but you may be clear at this point of time the root as well as the namespaces and the classes, WMI classes, but you're not clear because of this script, you're not clear what exactly this. I'm going to show you in another a minute. What you can do is you can simply go here to the Google, again type VBS edit, which is a free way you can use it. Okay, I mean you need to pay it, but you're free to allow to use this. Okay, I'm just trying to show you as a visualization so that you never forget what exactly inside the WMI. Okay, so I'm gonna install straightforward. It's a simple software. Anyone who uses this, right, it gets installed in a minute. Basically this tool will be useful for writing a VB script, but I'm gonna show you another way of what you can do. Okay, let me evaluate this. So here, if you look at here, WMI classes, it does actually pulls all the classes information. So let it pull. Okay, so you have here, let me drag here a little bit so that it will be easy for you. Now if you look at any of them, for example the bias which we have seen, so let's open the script also side by side. You see here the bias characteristics is a property which I called as an attribute right earlier while I was explaining. So if you see here echoing bias characteristic and the bias version, bias number, all of them are there, right? So all these are the values which are stored. For example, every PC will have a bias, right? So that bias version or build number or maybe manufacturer or the name or release date or serial number, that information will be stored in this placeholder. You call it as a placeholder or you put it in any way, but what happens is release date equivalent some value will be stored like this format. Okay, so this is a format. And similarly primary bias, so this is the any of the computer, if it's a value, is it true or false, will be shown. Okay, this is a name. Similarly, some of them will have the execution. You see here the programmable function also can be set. That means like for Win32 bus class, okay, this class used for some kind of motherboard related bus specific, and for that specific PNP driver related some kind of you want to reset, or you want to reset some kind of power state, this functions can be used. Okay, so how to use is explaining this class. I mean this tool is explaining you, and in fact with this tool you also have a lot of built-in scripts. Most of the built-in scripts are available. For example, you wanna get it simply networking related, monitoring TCP IP performance. What it is doing is it is querying to this namespace. Inside this there is a class called Win32 performance related TCP IP, and for that it is querying. Okay, the same thing what you have done here, which is built in, it is coming up. If you just go to the Win32 P, yeah, so here one of this class would have the values where it is at data underscore TCP. Okay, ABC underscore TCP, TCP version, TCP IP only. So it should be somewhere. Yeah, never mind. I know that's the if the class is not there, that means this Cryptomatic will pull the current machine's WMI information. Okay, this script is designed for all the machines. Maybe if that class whether exists or not, you'll have the script here available. Okay, so another way, what exactly WMI? WMI is a Windows Management Instrumentation. It has the repository where namespaces. Also, it has each namespace. It also have the different classes like this, right? And how it is related is the not yet talked about it. How it is really related to the SMS or SCCM. I'm gonna tell you in a minute. Before that, if you look at any of other classes, you will not have much information. Okay, you see here there's no much classes. In fact, terminal services you have it, but for here very less, right? Very less, right? So most of the used one would be CIMV2. So CIMV2 is the class which we would normally use it by default, and this will have almost all the possible things like time zone, anything like services. If you want to pull out the services information, for example here, what is the status of the services, you can pull it, service name, state and status, everything can be done. So why we are talking about the WMI at this point of time? The reason is WMI is the core. Okay, so what happens is SCCM will use WMI to do any kind of automation. It uses WMI. It also creates some of the namespaces here. Okay, I'll show you, once the client or once the SCCM server gets installed or client installs, you can give it a try. In fact, with this tool, it gives you some other namespaces like SMS client, and different names will come up here under namespaces, and each of them will have a different classes, and that classes, by using that as the repository, this tool works. Okay, so in other way, WMI is a foundation or the base to work the SCCM. What if your WMI is not working, your SCCM doesn't work? Okay, so that's how the tool is designed. The entire SCCM tool is designed again on the top of WMI repository. So if the WMI repository corrupted, you can't do anything with the SCCM. Okay, so that's a dependency. Okay, I used different tools, in fact 2 different tools. One is the VBS edit, which was explained for you for the purpose of the attributes of each class, how it looks like, just to visualize. And also I use the Scriptomatic tool to show you on namespaces as well as the classes. But where is my WMI on my machine, on my physical machine, if I don't use these tools? Okay, let me show you that. Go to the computer management. Okay, here under the services and applications, you have WMI control. This is what the WMI. If your WMI is corrupted, you get here as WMI is not working, or a red cross will come. So how do you see? You don't see here anything, but you can go to the properties little bit. It's trying to connect it, right? So once it is connected, you can see here the WMI got installed under WebEam folder. So if you go to the WebEam, just type of WebEam, it opens that folder. Okay, so in this folder the WMI got installed. All of this is the WMI inside this. In fact, it uses all these files and it creates a repository inside of this. So these are the files which are key for my WMI on this machine. What if somebody deletes this, somebody has renamed, somebody deleted this folder, it has to recreate automatically and then it should work. So, by using all these files, it rebuilds that WMI repository. Okay, so this is the WMI. Okay, if you're not able to connect successfully to WMI, that means SCCM client or SCCM server cannot work properly. Okay, and if you want to restore, you can do the backup and restore. And here little bit of the namespaces and the classes you can see, but not really helpful one. If you see here under CIMV2, you have very of the less, whereas with my explanation, if you see here under CIMV2, I can see a lot of classes, right? So you don't see that classes here, but it's fully hidden mode. Okay, and this is how only it will be visible to you when you want to physically see how actually WMI looks like. That's why I took different tools to you to explain to you in a better way, in fact. Okay, and That's it. Okay, and by default, as I said, CRMV2 would be the default namespace most of the time, so because it has almost all the required or the frequent used classes informations will be, we can pull it out. Okay. Now if you want to look at the services point of view, go to the services and you have Windows Management Instrumentation as a service, which is used for the Windows Management. Let me type it: Windows Management Instrumentation. This is the service, okay, which is built. This service is the WinMGMT, is the Windows Management Instrumentation WMI service. If you stop the service, okay, your WMI, you cannot connect. In fact, if, let me show you, practically I disable the service so that it doesn't start. Okay, if we try to connect to the same WMI, go to the properties once again, or just close this, and if I try to connect it, it says I failed to connect to the computer of the WMI because we stopped that service. So the actual service name is Windows Management Instrumentation. This service must be in a start state, right? So let me open up the service and put it the same state, because it's a critical service. You shouldn't do that in a production machine. If you stop the service, SMS services will get stopped automatically because everything is dependent on WMI, right? And as part of troubleshooting also, I'm gonna explain you later point how to rebuild entire WMI. What if there is a corruption happens, I'll show you how to rebuild that. And just to give you a little bit depth on the WMI, how the namespaces, you can skip it if you don't like this, but I like to share in depth. These classes are created when WMI gets rebuilt. For example, if I look at one of the MOF file, if you see MOF manufacture file, if I just open that with a notepad, I have something called, here it is a programming language. Okay, it's a different programming language. It was written that under this root of UEV class, under this namespace, okay, you're creating this class, okay, with the attributes of description and the static, all that information is getting, read and write information is getting written here. Let's take another one also, maybe which is a little bit network card related. If you look at the network adapter one, you can open up this. In fact, open with I don't want, definitely, yeah. If you look at here under standard SE, okay, CMV2, and these are the values it is actually writing up. Okay, so these files are getting compiled. There's a morph comp is an exe file which would be used. If you look at here, this is a file, this exe file which gets compiling all the morph files, okay, and DLLs, so that what happens is it will write that namespace. So what I'm trying to say is, yes, you can create your own WMA namespace to store some values, okay, and all you need to do is how to write in a MOV format is, you should know it. I'm going to show you that later part of this course, definitely, okay, when where we wanted to extract some kind of extra hardware information which is not coming. For example, Dell monitor you have, but you don't know a serial number of the Dell monitor. You want to pull that information. You can create your own WMI class and feed that value into the WMI class so that it stores that information. Say example, imagine that this is the Win32 underscore maybe a Dell monitor example as a class you created, and the name and the version and the manufacturer name and install date or maybe purchase date you want to create as a class, and you want to store that value. You can do that very well within the WMI class. That can be done by creating a new WMI class. Okay, in fact, you can have here all the classes information, how best you can create it. You have this options where you can create it on your own, in fact. Okay, so this is all about WMI in depth. Okay, and if you just to give you high level, once again, Scriptomatic tool gives you easy way to navigation for the what are the classes are available and the namespaces available. If you are more specific what can be programmatically used, you can always go for a VBS edit kind of tool, free tool to explore this kind of functions will give you whether it can be used a function or what are the classes. You can get more easiest way of if you're new to the programming, this is the easiest way to visualize with your own, and this will automatically write the script, and this is Scriptomatic will automatically write, and this can be written automatically in a VB script, a PAL or JScript, Python. It's fully automated, and then you can expect the output like HTML you want, simply run that. It gives that whatever the path. Okay, in fact that's the other error maybe. Shares example, run this, it will give you that information input based on the file. Something wrong, but that's end of the file. So this is what exactly, okay, you can get that output if you are concerned about multiple computers to be give. You can give as a local or maybe a computer 2 or sys2, sys3, all that can be written. Okay, and then you simply have to update. So what happens is here, if you look at the computers array is one computer now, say update script, it will update that and then run that information. Okay, that's all about the WMI. Okay, and let me close this. In fact, okay, I talked about the WMI in the previous slides. Now I'm talking about the SMS provider. SMS provider is nothing but your WMI repository, which gets installed as specific to your SCCM server. As I said, WMI classes, you can create your own namespace, you can create your own classes, right? Similarly, what happens when you install SCCM, okay, it creates its own WMI namespaces and the classes, and it stores that information inside that. So that's nothing but SMS provider is a repository of your database of WMI. So WMI database, you can call it as, which is a key. That means on top of WMI, you have your own namespaces and classes, which we call it as the SMS provider. This is very key when you're working on your SCCM console or when you're working on a SCCM server. This provider gives you a key flexibility to use it, and if this is not working, your console doesn't work. That means the SCCM server doesn't work properly. Okay, and in fact it doesn't work, it doesn't start even the required services, because all the classes and the namespaces are dependent on your SMS provider. That's why people also plan for high availability of the SMS provider. With the latest version, you have this option for the high availability. Earlier you don't have that option. And planning of the SMS provider also key, whether you want to place it on a separate server or where exactly, that also comes into a designing question. In fact, when you try to install a SCCM server, SMS provider gets automatically installed. Okay, we're going to show this anyway as part of the installation process. For now, we'll move to the next topics as ADK. What exactly the ADK? ADK stands for Windows Assessment and Deployment Kit. If you just go to the Google and try to search ADK, you get it as ADK, simply Windows 10, and then you get that. So this is the ADK, and you need to download and install as part of your pre-requirements to install SCCM server. ADK is required. So ADK is the core, and this is the this contains basically your required tools for installation of your operating system. In fact, okay, so for the operating system deployment purpose, you use the ADK, and this is one of the pre-requirement for installing the SCCM server. So basically, ADK gives you the information on if you want to deploy for new operating systems. It has the built-in tools like Basically, if you look at the ADK is the key, in fact, for the operating system deployment. ADK also have a design tool. Now, in fact, the design is one of the command which I'm going to talk later point. But for now, just to explain that ADK is the assessment toolkit, complete planning tool which is useful for to deploy the operating system. Also, it also uses for the performance debugging purpose also you can use. So it's a collection of set of different tools ADK when we are trying to install. If I just Google and show you Windows ADK setup, you'll come to know what are the tools it has. Simply if I just go to the so these are the tools, like an application compatibility tool. You have deployment tools, PE tool, ICD, and USMT, that's a user state migration, volume activation services, Windows performance assessment, and SQL server related tools. All these are the combination tools which are part of your ADK, and that is bundled in one tool. When you're trying to install operating system deployment, you have an option to what are the tools to be installed. In fact, we're not going to choose all of them. We would definitely choose few of them, okay, which are related to the SCCM server as a pre-requirement, and we get that installed automatically, and we'll continue further than that. Okay, so ADK is a tool which is a pre-requirement for SCCM server, which is available all the time from the Microsoft site, and you need to download that ADK version, the latest version, so that it gives the back compatibility. Okay, now let's talk about the another vocabulary, WinPE. Windows pre-installation execution environment. That is like when a Windows is starting, you have an option. Let me show you that WinPE. So you might have noticed when the operating system is booting up, okay, maybe for example you are trying to install, you are in this stage, for example Windows 10 or Windows 7 installation. Also, if you are in this state, that means a pre-execution environment, that is not fully loaded operating system, but it's a half of phase of the operating system, which gives you a great rich experience of the GUI, where you can do some installation or you can act on some of the wizards, right? So that kind of environment you get it. That's called about the WinPE. Okay, we're gonna look on this later point. So whatever it is used for the booting purpose, with the WinPE we call it as a boot images. Okay, PXE is the, if you're new to these words, in fact these are part of something called WDS. Okay, or WDS, let me write it down. WDS, Windows Deployment Services, which is used for deploy the operating system. Okay, boot images are nothing but the pre-execution environment will be available. So if a machine boots, so it boots with that WinPE phase. Okay, I'll show you that in a minute anyway. And for the PXE is the network boot mechanism if you don't have an operating system. Let me show you that also. PXE boot. So if you don't have an operating system, what it does is, if you look at here, it just search for the DHCP server and it gets the IP address. That means in your BIOS you need to configure first boot preference as your network adapter. So the network adapter boots up and it will look for an IP address to be assigned. So once the IP address is assigned by once the IP address is assigned by the DHCP server, it will go and check for the PXE server. Okay, the PXE is the server which will give you that boot image which we talked about earlier, right? So this is the boot image which will be given here, so that it boots that. Once it is boots up, with that boot image, you'll have the interface where you can click next, or maybe choose some options, right? So that options will be available. Okay, PXE is a service, and if you have a server with that, client gets boot with the PXE server and it loads the boot image, and the required user interface will be available so that user can do that actions can be performed. In fact, with the SCCM, what we do is, instead of the user to perform some actions, we automate that option. For example, you want to install some operating system. Hey, install the operating system, format the C drive, set the computer name as this, and blah blah things. You can do it with the SCCM server if you have it. Okay, and we talked about the WMA already, and bits we talked about it. Content library we have not talked about it. So what exactly a content library? Content library is nothing but you have all the packages. When I say package, in fact I have to include that word also here. Let me say first as a package. Okay, so what exactly a package? A package is let me write down here. Package is nothing but a software source. Okay, you have a software like MS Office. I call it as a package. So this source, okay, MS Office source is, I call it as one package. Okay, so this package will be storing someplace on a network shared folder. I call it as UNC all the time. So this network shared folder, okay, you call it as a shared folder in fact. So this shared folder is nothing but your content will be storing. So because this is all about the content, the package is nothing but a content. So we wherever you have all the packages are stored, that's nothing but a content library. Okay, what is a pre-stage content? So a pre-stage content, maybe at this point of time you don't need to know it, but just to explain to you, like you have a content is available locally. Okay, but what if there's a very no WAN, okay, no WAN, or maybe a line between one office to another office, maybe a very poor connectivity. In that situation, what you can do is you can pre-stage. That means before you actually target, you can copy the data directly. For example, you just uploaded maybe from OneDrive or Google Drive, and then copy to local machine, or you do the FedEx and then the source was copied, and then you're simply running some commands to say that hey, have actually pushed from the WAN, and you can check that the source is already updated, something like that. You can make the system to be full, but that's called in a pre-stage. At this point of time, maybe you can ignore the pre-stage. Later point you will understand what I'm trying to explain about this pre-stage, but remaining all of them you already knows now. I hope this is very boring, but it gives you very good information, and you want to learn lot, and from the basic level, this is very key for entire course. Okay, once you know these words, it's very easy for you to learn from scratch. Trust me, if you don't know anything on SCCM, still you can understand. And this course, especially this slide, is designed for a person who doesn't know anything on SCCM, and their first time they're trying to learn this language or this course. Then these are the basic words, they must know it. Once they know these as the alphabet or the words or the sentences, then you can make you can cook very well the required test of your SCCM features. Thank you for watching this. I know that this is a lengthy one, but my apologies. This is how the course for this specific for related to the vocabulary. So I have this is already open. Let me close.